Today, we discuss sleepers in our Dynasty Fantasy Football League. Looking at this kind of from a redraft perspective. Which players do we think are going to break out from later ADPs? And what prices are we willing to pay for these players in our Dynasty League? Stick around for all that and more. And welcome into the Dyno Construction Podcast. Got the band together again, Justin, David, and JP. Sleepers are always fun. We don't have a strict definition, this ADP in redraft or this ADP in Dynasty. We kind of just went for guys that aren't mainstream consensus, like starting lineup lock type players. We have some players that are more on the fringe, some players that are almost worth a first in Dynasty that we have as sleepers because we think that they have that breakout potential. And we have some players that honestly, you can pry away for a third from a lot of teams. So it takes all kinds. So with that kind of caveat being said, hit that like, hit that subscribe, and David, take us away with your first guy.
Sure. I'm going to start off with Michael Pittman Jr. Someone I've never really been that high on, but he's been very consistent until last year. He had a bit of a down year. He had a back injury. So from week 5 on, he was playing through this injury. It seems like every week they were talking about, well, he might go on IR. He might go on IR. Like he's not practicing. He might go on IR. So this back injury really hurt him. Looked like he was maybe starting to get healthy by the end of the season. Had a couple of big games there. He finished as wide receiver 41 in this season. Right now, he's priced at wide receiver 50 on Underdog, wide receiver 49 on Fantasy Pros. That's lower than the bad season with the back injury. He's still 27 years old. 3 years before last year, wide receiver 13, wide receiver 20, wide receiver 17. So we're talking about a very potential solid wide receiver 2 as going off at the price of wide receiver 50. Like, I don't know. It's weird promoting him because, like I said, I've always thought he was kind of overpriced, but I think this back injury, we just kind of went way too far in the other direction. So yeah, give me some Michael Pittman Jr. at cost for sure.
Give me some Michael Pittman Jr. at cost. Obviously, that probably means in redraft, wide receiver 50, we're talking about double-digit-ish rounds, so you're willing to reach a round or even two to make sure you get him like at that point if you need the wide receiver. If it's better for you to take that than their positions, definitely willing to reach. Now let's talk Dynasty price point. Mid to late second, are you ponying that up on a team where you need the wide receiver starter? It's not a depth piece. It's you can start 5 wide receivers and you only have 5 wide receivers, so you need this and you're contending otherwise, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking like start 10, maybe start 11, 12, definitely. I did sell him for a second on a rebuilder. I put a bunch of buy now prices and JP bought him. It was the second offer I got in and it came very quickly. Honestly, I almost regretted the price, but thinking about it, I think that's fair. A second flip, get the second as a rebuilder, flip him to a contender. That's a good price to pay, especially if he gets back to where he was as a consistent wide receiver too. That's almost a steal. Even if, like I said, he's 27. Even if you only get a couple years at a wide receiver 2 price for a second, that's a great deal.
To push back a little bit on just the reliability of him, of course, those seasons kind of pre Josh Downs coming into his own as a wide receiver, of course, no Tyler Warren at that point, and I can't even tell you who was the QB then. I think we had a Phillip Rivers season. Was there a Jacoby Brissett season in there? But it's Daniel Jones, maybe serviceable, but eventually we're going to go to Anthony Richardson, and then possibly at some point, who was that guy? Riley Leonard? Who knows what's going to happen in the circus here, right? So I do have to say, like, I wouldn't bet on wide receiver 2, but honestly, wide receiver 3 for a mid to late second, like 25 to 40 range, replacement level. Still young enough. I think he's fine. He's a fine piece. Start 11 and 12, I think, is when I'm starting to be interested in, and of course, best ball.
Yeah, different situations, but 2021 to 2023 in PPR, wide receiver 17, wide receiver 20, wide receiver 13. So he's a good player. I just think if you put him with a good passing quarterback, which we might not know if they have, I feel pretty good about him being a top 30 guy for sure. But I think it's part of the reason he's drafted at wide receiver 50 is the quarterback situation. But I mean, he's never finished outside the top 45 since his rookie year. So yeah, I think that is pretty close to his floor. So he's a pretty good bet because he could just have better luck for touchdowns, or the offense could be a little better than expected and beat that by a good bit.
Yeah, they definitely have a lot more weapons now than they have in the past. But still, we're talking about a guy who has done it before with bad quarterback play, as you point out, Justin. These other guys in this offense definitely have some talent, have some upside, and it's possible someone establishes establishes themselves as the alpha. But we know Pittman can be a target hog. If things don't pan out, I still trust in him. And like we just said, even if that wide receiver 2 season is not coming back, if you're getting wide receiver 34 at wide receiver 50 price, that's still helpful.
Yeah, I think I'm much more interested in trying to buy him for 2/3 than a second, but I definitely could see a roster where I decide to do it when I feel confident that is a late second. My first sleeper, my highest price sleeper, that's kind of the order we're doing it, is going to be Jackson Dart. I'm very interested in redraft. If I don't get a good quarterback one, I'm playing season long redraft with the understanding that like I'm probably not even drafting them, not drafting this guy at all, right? Like can't imagine I would. If I miss out on him, I miss out on him. But I'm probably trying to pick him up week 3 or 4 as I navigate buys. I might drop him, etc. So for redraft focus, right? He's a guy that I'm interested in trying to get on my roster later on if I don't have a quarterback solution. He had a lot of rushing upside in college. We saw if you just go and watch some of the tape of him when he scrambles, this guy can take off. He's tough too. I think that's going to fade away in the NFL. He doesn't have the build to really try to like Cam Newton, Anthony Richardson, run into somebody, etc. But I do think like he'll score some rushing touchdowns with 400, 500 rushing yards if he plays a full season, something like that, right? 400 is probably more realistic. But adding a little bit of points every game, a few touchdowns, and honestly, just looking at the first game of the preseason, I think it was 13 for 15. I know a lot of it was drop offs and a hurry up offense that we saw, but that's some decent accuracy, right? I know it's preseason, but he showed some poise. He completed the easy ones, and we know from his college tape connecting with Trey Harris deep, he can connect deep too. And this just did. I don't know if you guys actually knew this, but Malik Neighbors is good at football. He's going to be throwing to Malik Neighbors for a bit of time, assuming that he doesn't entirely flame out. And from what we saw this year, I think that in whatever games he starts this year, I'd bet it's going to be 8-ish games, 9-ish games at least. Like I can't imagine Russ starting. And at the very least, come playoff fantasy football playoff times, I think he'll be 3 games into his starting career, so you'll have some confidence starting him. So someone I'm very interested in. From a price point standpoint, last thing I'm going to say, if I can get him for a future early second, smash, no questions asked. And depending on the 1-2 swap, I think I'm not paying a future first for him personally, but a 1-2 swap. I'd even consider I know it's a late first 1-3 swap type of a thing in certain situations, like if I need quarterback, if it's the upside play I want, but I'm more looking for like a mid to late first for a late second type of swap to feel kind of confident in that. Of course, only if I need quarterback, etc. But I think it's a decent bet.
Yeah, he was somebody that I didn't invest super heavily in just because I didn't think he wasn't quite there to be pro ready as a rookie. But I mean, he has the fantasy skill set of the rushing. He's aggressive. His yards per attempt in college was higher. He was really great in college. And honestly, Brian Daboll being his offensive coordinator / head coach, I think is pretty good because, I mean, he curated a top 10 fantasy football season out of Daniel Jones one year. He can tweak some things to make it easier on the quarterback. And like you said, Justin, Malik Neighbors, he can do a lot for you. If you feel pressure, just find the guy. He can create yak as well. So I do think that there's aspects of Jackson Dart that could make him very good for fantasy. And their schedule in the beginning of the year is kind of tough. So he could start sooner than later because I don't see Russ really taking down like the Eagles and the Broncos and the Chiefs. That's 3 of the teams they play in the first 7 weeks, and those are some tough defenses.
I kind of think you got to pay a late first in some situations. I think that's my only pushback. I agree with him. I like him. I think he's in a pretty solid situation. Obviously, he has a decent bust chance, but like if he hits his upside, a late first is a very cheap price to pay. I know there's some risk baked in, but I think like if my QB room is say Kyler and Jordan Love, and I don't have a QB3, I've got maybe a little bit of flexibility with my draft capital, I could see spending a late first on Dart. I think he's kind of the perfect guy to fill out that room. You're getting a couple of guys that are kind of middle into their prime. Maybe Love's last season is more indicative of how he is instead of people thinking it's more of an injury thing. Maybe Kyler's actually going downhill. So you got this upside play. I know that's a lot of specific situations, but I think I could see paying a late first in the perfect situation like that.
And that is the type of player I do like to invest in at the QB3 position is a young guy, coaching staff we like, weapons we like, a draft pedigree. We prefer early first as opposed to late first for quarterback, but still first one, quarterback. Coaching staff we like from an offensive standpoint. We think they will know what he's doing. And the weapon. I was going to say weapons, but the weapon. All right, JP, give us your guy.
All right, I am going to go with a guy that I've been high on for a while, and that is Ricky Pearsall. There's a lot of things that I'm liking for him this season, the way it's setting up. First off, I liked him as a route runner, and even as a rookie, wasn't quite as good as I expected, but it wasn't that much below from what I was hoping for. And what was really good was his zone coverage success rate. Only 6 players charted through reception perception so far, which he's pretty much done with charting or better than him. So he was one of the best zone beaters. He's also above average against man and press. And that's all despite Matt Harmon admitting that Pearsall, the first couple games after returning from the gunshot wound, that his success rates were pretty poor those first couple weeks, but still he had those strong success rates with that baked in. But this is someone that can play from the slot, flanker, and he even got some snaps at X as well in a great offense. Now, the 49ers, they were 13th in the NFL with scoring offense total, but we know that's not up to snuff from what they've been at in the last couple of years. I mean, they're the best offense in 2023. They're first in scoring, and they're fifth in 2022. George Kittle, he's there, obviously, and he's really good, but he's never really been a high-volume guy. He's only had over 110 targets once, and that was back in 2018. He's just somebody who's really, really efficient. Kittle, he's fantastic. He's great. It's just that he's not that PPR guy that racks up a lot of volume. It's just that he's a tackle breaker and gets touchdowns and is just a beast. But if you're telling me that Ricky Pearsall is the wide receiver 1, he's got 4.41 speed for an offense that could definitely be back in the top 5 scoring offenses, especially with Brandon Ayuk being out like the first half of the year. I think that it's really easy to see him being a top 25 and maybe even up to top 20 wide receiver in that scenario.
So I really like the range that he's going in whenever I mock draft recently or when I do best ball drafts. But I'm finding it hard to pull the trigger because he goes right around Egbuka still. I'm assuming that's going to change with the injury news around it. But Egbuka, Matthew Golden in that range, Rome Odunze a little above him.
David, that's messed up. You're saying you're having a hard time pulling the trigger. That's really messed up.
Dude, that is messed up. I'm going to change that.
Don't change anything. We're keeping it in.
All right. I'm sorry. I know pun intended. I swear. That's really bad. I'm having a hard time drafting him, clicking the button in that range. Sorry, you taking him over all those guys I just mentioned? Maybe Egbuka is a different situation just because of the recent injury news.
No, I think Egbuka is an exception that's going to rise. I think he's going to drastically rise in these couple of days. But who am I faced up against?
Let's just say Matthew Golden, for example. Let's go with him. They're right back to back in Fantasy Pros. I can check Underdog real quick. They're back to back in Underdog right now. Oh no, he's back to back with Egbuka. But Odunze, Matthew Golden, Ricky Pearsall. How are you ranking those 30 in redraft?
It's tough because I really do like Odunze a lot, but
it's a great value for receivers in that range. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, Colston Lovin could be very involved as well as DJ Moore and Luther Burden. So I definitely understand why Odunze is pushed down, and I think as a talent, Dunze's got a lot bigger ceiling, but just from a volume perspective, I think Pearsall could pass him just based off of that. And Matthew Golden, same thing. I don't know if he has the ceiling to be 130 plus targets, unless he really, really shows that he's the alpha. Because I mean, Dobbs is going to be there. Kraft is really good. Jaden Reed's good. And I just think that limits them a little bit more than when you're facing off against like Jacob Cowing and Juwan Jennings just for the first half of the year.
Yeah, I mean, this is one where it's kind of on that fringe end of like sleeper breakout, whatever we want to call it, that it should be murky there, right? Ayuk Jennings, right? It's not murky, right? He's probably the number 2 target going into the season because I don't think anyone thinks Kittle is not going to be primarily the alpha there, but also Kittle gets games occasionally where he's not primary. You know, Shanahan game plans differently. There's going to be games where he's the game plan guy. I think we'll probably see in the first 6 weeks of the season 1 or 2 kind of bigger explosion weeks. Whether or not it's consistent, I think is just the thing that we're going to have to see, you know. And then when everyone comes back, what that looks like. But for fantasy, a hot start, whether we're talking about dynasty or redraft, a hot start is going to make that price go up from B to A, right? And a hot start is going to make it a lot easier for you to make your playoffs, right? You start out 5-1 as opposed to 3-3, probably making the playoffs, right? So the guy who can get a hot start like this, I love that as a pick. Can I get you to give me a dynasty price, JP?
Yeah, I could see definitely I would pay 2 seconds, an early second with like a playoff third, I think I would. And if I really need a receiver, I think I would be willing to do a 1-2 swap if I felt decently about the second. I think that's probably what you're having to pay because there is some hype right now. In the preseason, he was heavily targeted in their first drive. So I don't think you're going to get it cheaper than that.
A late first? Are you willing to part with like a late first in the right situation for it? You know, this is a buy team.
I feel like it would be a smash if he wasn't such an old prospect coming out, but the age holds me back a little bit. Kind of like I said with our hot take episode with, I guess I'll leave that. I won't say the name just so that everybody can watch if they haven't seen it, but I think in the right scenario, I would take it half the time, but other times not. I really like the player a lot, but long term, I mean, with Ayuk, I think he's great as well. Kittle's getting older, of course, and CMC, but it's tough to pay that late first. But I think sometimes I would, but usually not.
All right, talked a lot about that one. David, give us your second, a little bit later round sleeper.
Yeah, I wanted to go kind of deep, make sure we weren't giving people too many players they had already had on their draft sheets and things. I think it's important to talk about players in that range that are going to break out because they really win you the leagues. But hitting on some late picks with even just a bye week fill-in level of player is pretty important as well. I'm going to go with Houston Texans rookie running back Woody Marks. Mostly positive reports from camp. Nothing like, oh my gosh, this guy's amazing. He's taking over things. But look, he's got positive reports. We've got Mixon's injury scare and the lack of an update that I still haven't seen one. Possibly we get one between recording and releasing this episode. But as of now, we don't have an update on it. It scares me. CMC vibes from last year, like I'm avoiding Mixon. And then Nick Chubb's the other guy there. I mean, Damian Pierce also, but Pierce hasn't done anything for a while. Chubb's coming off an injury as well. So it's just a very open backfield until Mixon reestablishes himself, if Mixon reestablishes himself. But I think worst case, Woody Marks is going to be the passing down guy. He did have a great college profile for his receiving ability. Not the best overall, but like he's a pretty good pass blocker. It looks like, obviously hard to tell in a small sample size, but in the preseason, he's graded out pretty well doing that. So with all the uncertainty there, the fact that I think his floor is a pass catching running back, which in that offense might lead to some flex value. But past that, I think he could take some early down work if he excels early on. So he's someone you're getting pretty much free. He's going to be probably, last round kind of guy in most formats, at least for redrafts.
And then moving to that dynasty conversation as well, when we're talking about buying him, I think I'm willing to pay 2/3 for him if I have the flexibility, especially if I was a Mixon owner. I'd absolutely smash paying 2/3 for him. In other situations, I'm considering it. First question, I guess, is that. Second question is, it's a late second. Any world you're doing that in?
I don't think I can bring myself to spend a second yet. I need to see it first. I need to see the usage. I need to see that he actually has a chance to early down work, because his college profile was not great when it comes to like being a workhorse kind of guy. So I need to see how they're going to use him first to think about a second. I could see 2/3 depending on the thirds. If they're both early, probably not. If it's my only flexibility, probably not. But assuming they're random-ish thirds and it's not the only draft capital that I have to get through the season, yeah, I could absolutely see that. I think it's a pretty good upside shot in Dynasty right now.
Yep, it's definitely one I'm interested in taking as well. Definitely happier when I got him in the late third, early fourth a while ago than having to pay up for him now, but potentially interested in doing it. My second and a little bit deeper sleeper, Elijah Arroyo. Also a guy that I was getting in the late third, early fourth in a rookie draft. I know there's some rookie drafts where he went at the 2-3 turn or early third, but he also dropped a lot. Or Noah Fant was traded. Thought this was a while back when people weren't as confident in the role that he might be playing. But when we look at what else is going on there outside of JSN, what do they have? They have MVS, sure. What are they going to be doing there, right? At the wide receiver position? It's not going to be much. So he's in this situation. All we really want for a tight end is the path to be the number 2 target on the team. And he has it. He has the ability to play vertically. We saw that at Miami in college. Of course, he's a rookie. That's always risky at tight end. But he's not really that expensive. In redraft, you can get him very late. He's not the first tight end I want to draft. Could be the first tight end I draft, honestly. I don't really care. Tight end, I can stream the position if I don't get one of the big guys. But somebody I'm very interested in adding late in redraft and in Dynasty. In tight end premium, at this point, I'm feeling pretty comfortable shipping a late second for him if I can get it mid to late second. You might not always be able to get him for that, but then see if you can ship Juwan Jennings or Mike Gesicki or Noah Fant or somebody else, Hunter Henry in a late second, like a replacement level player in a late second for that shot at that dynasty upside. I'm okay with kind of that type of a deal, because sometimes giving them that tight end back that they could slide in can help you get there. I'd smash 2/3 for Elijah Roy on any tight end premium. Non-tight end premium, probably my price point is more like 2/3. I don't think I'm approaching that second. Or Arroyo.
Curious, Mason Taylor, Elijah Arroyo. Who are you taking?
Arroyo for me, and that's not particularly close, honestly.
Both formats.
Yep. Which guy is in the offense that I think will have any level of competent throwing? It's as simple as that. Until Tyrod Taylor is throwing, I don't care.
I think that's kind of a hot take a little bit. I'm an Elijah Arroyo fan. I don't think it's crazy now that Noah Fant is gone, because now I drafted Elijah Arroyo just a few picks after Mason Taylor before we had a one draft, whereas before the NFL draft. And I just think he has way more upside. I think Mason Taylor's more of like a Dalton Schultz kind of guy, but I think Elijah Arroyo could be a guy who has the upside to be top 6 or so because he's really athletic. And unfortunately, we didn't get to see him run at the combine, but a lot of GPS data showed that he was really fast. They've even been raving about playing him an X wide receiver too. I don't think they should do that a whole lot. Maybe you can mix it in here and there, but that just proves how high they are on him and how athletic he is, because tight ends can't usually play X because they're just a lot bigger and a lot slower, but I think he's really good. I think he is. It's just see if it comes together for him.
I mean, I said it will, so of course it will. No, of course it's sleeper. Could definitely miss. JP, who is your last guy before we dive into one or two honorable men?
So the guy that I'm going to talk about here is Roschon Johnson. Now, there's a lot of hype about the Chicago Bears right now. You know, everybody's excited about the offense. Now, if that offense really does take a step forward, the running back is going to be dragged up a little bit. We know that DeAndre Swift is there, and we know that Ben Johnson didn't really want to have DeAndre Swift around when he was on the Lions. He kind of shipped him off for basically nothing. I think it was like a 5th or 6th, and you could have got that in a comp pick if you would have let him walk away. So I think that's what the Eagles did. They traded for him. They got a comp pick right back for letting him walk away. I mean, the Eagles didn't want him either because I don't think DeAndre Swift's that great. I think he's got good parts to his game, but I just don't think he's got the vision. And I think the guy that's going to keep the offense on schedule would be somebody like Roschon Johnson. And we saw that before Jahmyr Gibbs really took a step forward. When Jahmyr Gibbs was a rookie, he wasn't as consistent as one of those guys like David Montgomery. And David Montgomery outcarried Jahmyr Gibbs in 2023. I could see Roschon Johnson outcarrying DeAndre Swift. Maybe Swift has more pass catching ability. I don't think Roschon Johnson is something special, but I think if he's getting a 50 to 60% carry share, the offense takes a step, and he's the goal line guy, I could definitely see him being an RB2, just kind of for a very, very cheap price. Obviously, I'm not projecting him there, but I think that it's within the range of outcomes if this offense really does take a step forward, because it just doesn't seem like every account in the history of Ben Johnson, I don't think he's going to use DeAndre Swift like a workhorse at all. I think he's going to use him more as a change of pace receiving back with mixing in some carries. So unless Kyle Monangai really establishes himself as a guy that they really like, I think that Roschon Johnson is the guy that would be the bruiser in that offense. So for his cost, I mean, I think that it's a really cheap running back that you could be able to flex on bye weeks.
And touching on that dynasty price point one more time here, JP. Are we talking about 4th through 4th? Like, what are you willing to buy this? I personally don't want to pay a lot, but I love the answer of whoever's cheapest on the Bears as somebody I wouldn't mind acquiring.
Yeah, I think I would definitely pay 2/4. I think if I had to, I might even pay a playoff 3rd, because I mean, I think that he definitely is somebody that you could plug in and play. And even if he doesn't work out this year and I paid a playoff 3rd, I think he's somebody that's going to be good enough to be a backup for a team for a while. And those are the kind of guys we like to roster and just stick around on our teams in case there's an injury ahead of them. So, and there's also that upside that if DeAndre Swift does get hurt, maybe Roschon does get 70% of work also. So I think that's kind of built into his upside a little bit as well.
Would you pay Jaylen Warren?
I think we've seen more from Jaylen Warren as a player, and I just feel better about him as a talent and also as a receiver. So I don't think I'm there, no.
All right, I was just going to counter your offer sitting in my inbox if that was the case.
Yeah, I think that with the reports of Caleb Johnson not being the greatest pass blocker, pass catcher, I think Jaylen Warren's definitely going to have a role. So, yeah, I'm more confident about his role than Roschon's just this day, and also the talent, just because we've seen it from him.
All right, David, go ahead. You had an honorable mention you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, I can't believe we just did a sleeper episode this week, and we still haven't mentioned Bill, a.k.a. Jacory Krosky-Merritt. Just real quick, I'm not going to talk about him much. Everybody's talking about him right now. He's everybody's sleeper currently. Just real quick, guys, are you at the point you're willing to pay, let's say start 11 plus, you're a competitor, are you willing to pay your second for him if you have a running back?
I don't think I am, honestly. It's just not my process. And then we have Bill. You know who's probably the starting running back next season? Player not on the roster. So to me, I'm just not personally that interested in it. Yes, there's the chance we could be wrong, but it's more likely that it's James Robinson or Tyrone Tracy or, than it's Austin. It's more likely it's funny. Eckler on the same team now, right? But it's more likely that somebody else comes in and takes over than it is that the late round guy. We are seeing more late round these days. We're seeing Kyron. We're seeing Chase Brown. And Kyron did actually just get an extension, right? So it can happen, but I'm personally just not yet betting on it. And yeah, maybe it gets steamed up and I miss out on it. But that's why I have some shares I picked up on the waivers this off,
Yeah, I don't think I can pay a second either. I mean, I wasn't really interested in doing that myself for Brian Robinson, who I think that's kind of the role he'd be playing as the ground guy, because you look at his college production, there was not much for the receiving aspect. Now, he's more athletic than Brian Robinson, so I think there's a little bit more upside there, but also there's a lot more downside too. And like you said, I don't feel like he's going to be the starter next year unless we really, really get impressed by him.
And JP, any sleepers you really want to mention here?
Sure, I'll take the opportunity to talk about Torrey Horton just for a quick second. He's gotten a lot of buzz. It seems like he's been mixing in with the ones for the Seattle Seahawks, and I kind of thought that he had the talent to be like a round 3 guy. He fell a little bit more. He ran in the 4.4s coming off of a torn ACL, and he was very productive in college. So I think that he's actually a pretty good player, and that now with him getting buzz on top of what I kind of believed about him pre-draft, I think that he might be able to be a guy that could have like one of those little mini breakouts. But I don't think he's going to be able to take over JSN, obviously.
To me, that's just sell opportunity. Did you pick him up off of waivers? Can you get a third? That's the way I'd approach that one personally. But, if you're deep, especially if you're best ball, it's a wide receiver in best ball, would love to have him. And I don't really have another sleeper prepped. And at the end of a long school day, our brain is too fried to come up with anything that was not already on the show sheet. I'm kind of like Ron Burgundy. I read what's on the teleprompter in front of me, although I didn't actually look at a show sheet today. So thank you for joining us for another episode of the Dyno Construction Podcast. We hope you found this as helpful for you as it was for us. Please remember to like and subscribe wherever you listen or view. And from all of us here at the Dyno Construction Podcast, until next time.